Death, destruction and a deepening humanitarian crisis along the Gaza Strip is what marks 1 month since October 7 attacks on Israel. While clamor continues to call for a ceasefire and hostilities, Israeli Defense Forces have claimed that they have completed the encircling of the Gaza enclave. The intensified push came as Israelis marked a month since Hamas's brutal October 7 assault on communities in southern Israel, in which more than 1,400 people, mostly civilians, were killed when the victims in their homes or at an outdoor music festival. At least 240 people of all ages were abducted and remain hostage in Gaza. Remember, Israel has appeared to pursue a two-pronged strategy in Gaza, and this urging civilians to head south as it carries out heavy bombing raids and a large ground offensive on the north. While the northern part of Gaza is where Hamas is thought to have an expansive network of underground tunnels, which is why it's also called a metro. The United Nations, while facing immense backlash over failing to reach a breakthrough between Israel and Palestine, has continued to show concerns over deaths on both sides. About 1.5 million people in Gaza, or 70% of the population, have fled their homes. Many have sought shelter from airstrikes in schools or even hospitals. While experts claim that there seems no end in sight to this war, it remains to be seen if either nations agree on a friendlier regime anytime soon. And for that, let me also bring you a report on how, for Israel, especially its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the bone of contention is a humanitarian pause, but no ceasefire, because Israel believes that this will give time to Hamas to regroup and re-strategize. Where is Israel standing at this war as millions of Gazans die? Here's a report.
Israeli leader Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday seemed willing to consider pauses in fighting in the Gaza Strip, either for aid or the exit of hostages, but again ruled out a ceasefire for now, despite international pressure. Netanyahu was speaking with ABC News.
I know the Biden administration has also said now is not the time for a ceasefire. What they're proposing is a humanitarian pause. There will be no pause?
Well, there will be no ceasefire, general ceasefire in Gaza without the release of our hostages. As far as tactical little pauses, an hour here, an hour there, we've had them before. I suppose we'll check the circumstances in order to enable goods, humanitarian goods to come in, or our hostages, individual hostages to leave. But I don't think there's going to be a general ceasefire. It's not that I think it will hamper the war effort. It'll hamper our effort to get our hostages out, because the only thing that works on these criminals in Hamas is the military pressure that we're exerting.
Blasts and flares lit up the sky over Gaza early Tuesday morning. It's now been more than 1 month since the Hamas raid on southern Israel, when militants killed 1,400 people and seized 240 hostages. Israel has bombarded the area since then. Gaza health officials say it has killed more than 10,000 Palestinians, including some 4,100 children. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned on Monday that Gaza is becoming a, quote, graveyard for children, calling for an urgent ceasefire. However, both sides have resisted international pressure to do so. Israel says hostages should be released first, while Hamas says it will not free them or stop fighting while Gaza is under assault. On Monday, the White House said U.S. President Joe Biden had discussed, quote, pauses and possible hostage releases in a phone call with Netanyahu, reiterating his support for Israel while emphasizing that it must protect civilians. Like Israel, the U.S. fears Hamas would take advantage of a full ceasefire to regroup. On Monday, Netanyahu was also asked about what happens when the conflict is over.
President Biden has said that it would be a mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza. Who should govern Gaza when this is over?
Those who don't want to continue the way of Hamas. It certainly is not. I think Israel will, for an indefinite period, will have the overall security responsibility, because we've seen what happens when we don't have it. When we don't have that security responsibility, what we have is the eruption of Hamas terror on a scale that we couldn't imagine.
And that food and clean water are running out, with aid deliveries nowhere near enough.
All right, 1 month on, and the question remains, where's this war headed? And for that, let me introduce my guest today. I'm joined by Jay Engelmeyer, who is the founder and publisher of the Judean Zionist. Many thanks to you, Jay, for joining in. The burning question, of course, is what I'd like to begin with. 1 month on, and what has Israel achieved in Gaza?
Israel has, killed a lot of terrorists on the first hand. We've taken out a lot of infrastructure in terms of the tunnel infrastructure. I think the early part of the campaign was meant to go ahead and destabilize the tunnel network and take out key operation centers. I think that's been accomplished. Then when the ground operation started, they were very, very quick to literally cut the Gaza Strip in half. You've got forces literally south of Gaza City, all the way to the water, and you've got forces north of Gaza City by Beit Lahia, all the way to the water as well. And I think that we have the bulk of the terrorists and the Hamas infrastructure, which is assumed and according to intelligence expected to be in the north itself, is essentially contained right now. They've released, they found one hostage and been able to release her. Unfortunately, they found several bodies as well of people that were dragged in. So I think so far it's been okay. We've had casualties on the Israeli side in terms of soldiers, but I think that it's minimal compared to what it could have been, and we just hope and pray that it continues to go as smoothly.
All right, Jay, we just heard in one of those reports where the Prime Minister of Israel was asked on ABC during that interview where he said that Israel will have overall security responsibility in Gaza for an indefinite period after the fighting ends. And that's why I'd like to delve deeper into what happens to Gaza after the military ground operation.
I can't answer for how long, because I think that really depends upon the Palestinian Authority and how quickly they can actually go ahead and establish some sort of governance. It's been proven for the past, since Oslo, that they have not been able to manage their own backyard. Look at Jenin, you look at Nablus. These are cities where a lot of the Palestinian Authority forces are not even welcome. So I think it's going to take some time, but I'm hoping actually that the framework that we have with the Abraham Accords and with our Arab allies right now, and hopefully we'll bring Saudi Arabia into that mix as well. Between all of that and us, we can actually come up with a comprehensive plan that will allow not just for the rebuilding, but the administration of Gaza under a more international framework where the Arab states are doing some of the lifting as well. And I think that will actually help ease Israel's burden, because when you have the Arab states in there, you have the Arab states as a part of it, the Palestinians will have less of an objection to the presence of foreign people there.
All right, Jay, I'm going to request you to continue staying with us. In the meantime, let me also present the horror that Palestinians are living. Many have died, and those who have escaped this war continue to live with the horrors that they have faced so far. Here's the experience of one such Palestinian American.
It's like you die or you leave. What do you choose between? Your childhood memories, your home, your land, or being alive? Just a few meters far from us, a bomb just fell, blew up. I was panicking. I had the worst panic attack, and I started screaming and crying. My dad is outside, my mom is outside, my nephew is outside, and I started screaming like crazy. I felt like my dad is gonna be blown to pieces. My mom is not gonna be there, and my nephew is gone. My mom started contacting the State Department. I even took videos of her talking to the American Embassy in Israel, because it was just so rude. It's cold. It's like so blunt that we're not going to be helping you. You're Palestinian at the end of the day. You're from Gaza Strip at the end of the day.
Jay, the other question that comes to mind is what will prevent Hamas 2.0 from filling the power vacuum? Given the absence of serious political alternatives to Hamas, how can the world community help in ensuring that Palestinians choose to abandon Hamas?
I think what you have to really understand is that it's not, Hamas is just a component of the major problem. The major problem actually lies within Iran. It lies within Qatar, where a lot of money is flowing from these states into the infrastructure. The same thing with Hezbollah, same thing with the Houthis, same thing with Palestinian Islamic Jihad. The names might be different, but the benefactors are exactly the same. How do you change that? Well, first you got to change the education system over there. There was an educational book that was leaked for high school within the Palestinian territories, and it was a physics question actually, and it was actually a physics question that asked if you are carrying the coffin of a martyr. And again, they're using the languages of the resistance of the terror networks within their educational framework, and I think you have to undo that. The Arab states will have a lot to do with that, but I think you need to disrupt the funding network that comes through vis-a-vis Iran and Qatar. And I think that's the only way that you're actually going to start to see some daylight for the Palestinians to come out of this terror fog, this death cult that they've been living under for the past couple of decades.
At the same time, there are concerns over the failure to address concerns over terrorism. The UN is also being blamed, and so is the international community altogether. But the question remains, can Israel and the United States and their military might be enough to sort of annihilate Hamas?
I'm actually going to go as far as to say that I believe that Israel does not need the might of the United States at this point to get rid of Hamas. I think Israel needs the United States right now to ensure that other state actors don't get involved in this conflict and allow Israel to do what they're doing. It's my understanding that there are no American forces on the ground. This is solely an Israeli campaign. And I do believe that if the presence of the United States off the coast with their two carrier groups, and now you have the Ohio-class submarine off, I think that is minimizing the chances that we're going to see other actors such as Hezbollah or such as Houthis or even the Iraqi militias try to come into the country and try to join the fight. That being said, I do believe that combined forces of the United States, of Hamas, and of other allied powers as well within Europe, England and France to be specific, is certainly enough to go ahead and stop the terror network as we see it today. Does that mean that it's not going to pop up again in 5 or 10 years? We have to address the root of radical Islam to begin with, and we have to address the fundamental nature of it and what it's about. This is not, everyone thinks that this is a fight within Israel and Hamas about land or about apartheid or about occupation. It's not. You see it in the videos from October 7th, the videos that Hamas fighters filmed themselves. They're not screaming death to the Zionists. They're not screaming death to the Israelis. They're screaming, death to the Yahud, to the Jew. It's a fundamental problem. And you've had people from Hamas go on to various different networks. Ismail Haniyeh is one of them. Another one was Masa Abu Marzouk, who's actually made a statement saying that this is not going to be the first one. There's going to be more and more and more attacks of this sort. And it's not just going to be contained to Israel. It's going to be contained to all the quote unquote infidel states. And I think that's what the world has to address. This is not a war against Israel and Palestine. This is a war against fundamental Islam in the rest of the world.
All right, Jay, I'm going to, in fact, also bring for our viewers the story of the families of those who've been taken hostage by the Hamas. There are still hundreds of people in Hamas as hostage, remember, and there is still hope alive for these families, which now, in fact, that hope is, of course, beginning to dwindle 1 month into the war. Here's a father awaiting the return of his family. Let's have a look at this report.
It's been over 31 days of waking nightmare for Avihai Brodach. 31 days since he last spoke to his wife or saw his 3 young children, aged 10, 8, and 4 years old. 31 days since the October 7th attacks by Hamas on Israel, which kidnapped and took his family hostage.
It's been so long, I'm starting to lose it. I don't know in what situation they are in, health-wise, or if they're being fed, taken care of. So I can only hope that everything's all right.
Brodach's family was taken from one of the hardest hit communities, Kfar Aza. They were hiding in a safe room with their neighbor's daughter, whose parents were killed. He had gone outside to see if he could help stop the gunmen, but they got separated. At first, he thought everyone but his dog was killed before he received confirmation they were taken. He started camping with his dog outside the Israeli Defense Ministry with a sign to remind the military, "My family is in Gaza." Others have joined him in what's become a daily occurrence.
All day, this is what I'm doing. I talk to people and I tell them my story and my beliefs, and I just keep on going, and nighttime comes and I just fall asleep, maybe I don't fall apart, but I just fall asleep, from all this. I get so tired. So I just wanted them to see, the decision makers, to know that I'm there and my family is held hostage. So whenever they make their big decisions, they think about me, and I think they are thinking about me right now. They can't ignore me.
After a month, Brodich is tired of protesting, but he says views of the war are changing.
I think it has changed a lot. People did change their views on this conflict. Everybody just wanted vengeance at first. I don't think, they wanted retaliation, which is human, I guess, but I hope it ends, it's just a cycle that keeps going on and on. And now I'm a part of it, and my kids and wife are a part of it. They shouldn't be.
All right, Jay, I also want to ask you about Iran's role, since you talked about Iran. The fact of the matter is that the rhetoric has been very straightforward, but the role, as reports are suggesting, is not as straightforward. Iran's top officials have so far only authorized limited attacks by their own allies in Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, and even Yemen. Attacks likely not only meant to show Iran's strength and deterrence, at the same time also avoid direct combat with the United States. Do you also sense some kind of a strategic ambiguity when it comes to Iran in this conflict between Hamas and Israel?
I don't think they're playing a game of strategic ambiguity. I think that Iran specifically was shocked by the response that came out of the attacks on October 7th. I think there's been a lot of speculation that Iran was actually involved in the planning of it. And there was a nod essentially to Hamas that if they start this and they're effective in executing it, then Hezbollah will join in, and we'll get that multi-front war that everyone's been talking about for the past 3 or 4 months. I think that President Biden's commitment to go ahead and send a carrier group, not one, but 2 carrier groups into the region, and the way that Rishi Sunak spoke and the way that Emmanuel Macron spoke, I think that kind of scared Iran a little bit and gave them pause in order to join. That being said, do I think that Iran is finished? Absolutely not. I do think that they're continuing. I do think that they will continue to try to find ways to destabilize Israel specifically, but the broader region as well as Europe. And I do think that right now they were kind of caught off guard. I think they thought that they had a big victory on the 7th and things were going to go smoothly from thereafter, and it didn't happen as planned. So I think they had to pivot and they had to walk back some of their earlier commitments that they had made to Hamas. And I believe that what you're seeing right now is kind of tacit nod to destroy Hamas, because we don't really want to get Hezbollah forces involved with 2 carry strike groups right off the coast. I think that's more the scenario that Iran's looking at.
Last but not least, Jay, Israel is at the moment drawing comparisons with the defeat of ISIS, but it is important to remember that Muslim ground forces, especially Shiite forces, did support the Iraqi military that time, and they made an enormous difference by applying military pressure against ISIS in Iraq and Syria over a period of years. The campaign to defeat ISIS joined military and political operations together practically from the beginning. How important, in your view, is going to be the support of Arab nations to Israel when it comes to defeating Hamas?
Oh, I think it's critical. I think Israel needs the support of Arab nations. It needs the support of its friends. And I understand that there's political reasons within their own countries why they can't be so vocal, but I do believe countries such as the UAE, even to a degree of Saudi Arabia, where Mohammed bin Salman has been on record as saying when this is over, the normalization, he expects it to continue. So I do believe that the Arab nations are incredibly important to this fight. I just do want to point out one thing. Back then, when the coalition was fighting ISIS, Iraq was a completely different country. Right now, I'm not so sure that you can get Iraq to back a fight against ISIS or against militias because, again, the majority or the ruling party in Iraq right now is beholden to Iran. So I think that the dynamics have changed. That being said, ISIS is still not gone. You still have American forces, you still have allied forces within eastern Syria and northern Iraq, still trying to protect certain elements and certain assets from ISIS attacks. You do have a new militia popping up every other day. I think in the past couple of days, there's been 45 different attacks on U.S. installations and U.S. bases within eastern Syria and northern Iraq. So I think that fight is ongoing, and that actually, in my opinion, works to the benefit of what Israel is doing right now, because it's two sides of the same exact coin. And I think what you're seeing is Hamas is essentially mimicking the desire that ISIS had in order to go ahead and create this Islamic or this holy Islamic area, and by eliminating what they would call infidels or the Yahud, the Jews. And at the same time, you have the Western powers still in Iraq and still in Syria trying to contain ISIS and trying to minimize the damage from these new groups that are coming up and launching attacks on a regular basis against